Now, I don't have a twin brother, but I can imagine that this must be what it's like if one brother has all the nicer stuff. Now, remember what I said about this being a much delayed review, and that's because we weren't able to get our hands on the unit for the last couple of months. We've been doing a lot of stuff. So what we have here is actually a 2022 model. Now, that doesn't really matter that much because the 2023 model you'll be getting from showrooms is actually pretty much identical to this one. What's going to be key here is that we're looking at the Veloz when it already has plenty of mileage on the clock, 4,000 kilometers. Now, some of you may say, oh, 4,000 kilometers, that's not that much for a car. Well, let me tell you now, when it comes to media demonstration cars, test drive units, that's actually quite a bit of mileage. Think of it like dog years. Now, looking at both vehicles, we can now illustrate the differences between the two. Like I said, Eric has already reviewed this version of the Avanza. This is the 1.5G. The Veloz we have there is the 1.5V. Now, you look at both, the big difference, of course, is there's way more chrome. Because look at the Veloz, chrome in the front, chrome running around all the way through the side, even chrome on the bezels where the fog lamps are. I mentioned before that it looks like the T logo they used to use on the dealerships, or the T flashing. I'm not sure what they actually call that, but that's what it really reminds me of. But clearly, looking at the Veloz, looks a lot fancier. The Avanza actually is a bit more understated, or at least in this color, because this comes in a very, I'm starting to like these kinds of shades of green in cars. But clearly, there's a bit more flash with the Veloz here, especially in this type of white pearl, which of course, Toyota, I think they really do charge extra for this kind of stuff. And right here on the windshield, we can see one key safety feature. These cameras, that's for the Toyota safety set. Oy, Barney, ingat ingat. Baka ano mo yung glass, salary deduction yan. But for all your glass needs, we suggest you turn to our friends over at Aguila Autoglass. Aguila Autoglass has been in the business for over 70 years. This family-owned company is known for taking care of customers just like family. So for any glass needs, contact Aguila Autoglass. They will surely take good care of you, especially if you drive something like a Veloz or an Avanza. Aguila Autoglass is a premium partner of AutoIndustriya, and they help me keep my reviews honest and independent. If you need to replace the glass on your car, van, SUV, or truck, go with Aguila Quality and visit any of their 26 branches all around Luzon. Now on with the review. Now that we have both the Avanza and Veloz side by side, well, you can see the differences with the back. Now, the key thing to remember here is that when it comes to engineering multiple vehicles or top hats on the same platform, or even in the case of this, the same body, the more body panels you make common between the two, the more you will save, the more you will make it economical. Economies of scale. What's really changed are trim pieces. Now, you look here, the taillights are actually different from the ones here. This one has a light bar that goes up the middle. What really makes it possible is that they change out the fascia panel right here. This is actually plastic. Same with this one. It differentiates the two. There's also differences with the reflectors right here. There's none here. But other than that, pretty much the same. I mean, wipers, rear camera, sensors, all that stuff, pretty much common. Now, when we pop open the trunk, will we see any changes? Well, for one, what you have here is a space that measures about 14 inches deep and about 51 inches wide. What makes this interesting is that they also have a storage compartment under here for tools. Actually, the jack is over there. I think you can fit shoes in here if you're the type who carries a lot of shoes with you. That's going to be very, very useful. I'm sure our cameraman Barney is very, very interested in the Veloz right now. I pulled the wrong strap there. You can fold these very easily. I mean, compared to the older Avanza and Veloz, the folding mechanism of this one is much improved because this one now rides on a full car platform, like a crossover, but it gives you the ability to move the rear seats down flat because there's no chassis underneath that would take up space. Now, in this configuration, of course, the widest point is 51 inches there, but in the narrowest point is about 42 inches, and it goes at about 40 inches from here right up to there. When you start folding down the third row, let me show you with this one, because when you pop open this one, well, we have all of it already folded down. And that's interesting because basically the space is the same. It just goes up to 72 inches from here up to there, or about 6 feet. But when it comes to the space of both, really no difference. It's just a matter of what you can expect to see inside. So let's check out what's in the cabin of the Veloz. So the back seat of the Veloz, actually, like I mentioned before, it's a nice place to be. I mean, you do sit a bit high up, so you don't get that the headrest is blocking your view unless somebody puts it way up like that. But other than that, the seat itself is comfortable. I have an armrest here if nobody's sitting here, so yeah, it's very nice. No cup holder here because you have cup holders on the doors and one here in the middle for, well, the person here, the unfortunate guy here in the middle. If there was two of me in here, I have 2 charging ports down there. There are pockets on the rear of the seat, so you can have one for your phone and one for your, I don't know, phablet, whatever, iPad. You can do that there. Same with the other side. The leg room is actually quite nice because they scallop the back of the front seats, so you can, if you're really tall, you can go right up to that, no problem. And even then, this actually slides forward, which is good because you can give more space to the people in the back. And mind you, I sat in the back before, it's actually a good place to be. You do sit a bit over the rear axle, so it's not going to be comfortable if you're the type who gets nauseous on long drives, but it should be okay for short drives. Being that, of course, they made it into a car platform, your legs also go down. I mean, your feet go down to the floor a bit better than the previous generations. There's a charging port there, cup holders, all that kind of stuff. Here in the middle again, well, what do you have? The unique thing here is that you do have a 3-point seat belt for the person sitting here, which is better than just having a lap belt. That's part of Toyota's attention to safety. The other thing is actually the AC right here. Actually, I think it's more of a blower. And in my previous video, I discussed these deflectors that they have, like an aileron kind of thing instead of a vent. But what it does, it deflects air to you depending on what your angle is right up here. However, in my time with the Veloz, it doesn't seem to be that effective because when you put it down like that, it just kind of goes all over the place. So it's a matter of a preference if you like that, but for me, not really. And besides, can be a bit loud with this on full blast, which is kind of normal. But again, maybe could have been better with this. But overall, in terms of comfort, this would actually be really good. I mean, it would be nice if they tinted this because, man, it's really been hot lately. Now let's check out the front. If you just step into the Veloz from the Avanza, well, you will notice quite a few differences. Actually, that's what we're kind of impressed with when it comes to these two vehicles, because there is actually quite a bit of differentiation between the two. You look at the dashboard, the colors are different. We'll show you the footage of both of these dashboards right now, but you can tell the differences with the color scheme, the way this part is, the way this part actually is, because in the Avanza you have the manual handbrake. This one you have the electronic parking brake with the auto brake hold. What you actually have here is a wireless charger, which is actually nice and interesting. But first, the dashboard. I actually like the design of this one because it's got a nice textured feel, but it is, of course, pretty much all plastics. I mean, anywhere you tap, you're not really paying for the premium soft touch material yet, except maybe here. It's got a little pad here. Does give it a nice touch. Has Veloz right there, which is all well and good. But the impression it gives you is that it's a bit more upscale, a bit more upmarket than the Avanza, which is always a good thing. You want to make your customers for a certain more premium model feel that they're in a more premium car. But of course, looking around, yes, it's pretty much all plastic, but it seems pretty well put together. It is a bit busy though. I mean, you look, there's a lot of lines going on. So if that's your kind of thing, you'll actually really enjoy it. But there are some things we noticed, like for example here, when you touch the grab handle, or when you grab the grab handle, it really moves. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of force to do that, so keep that in mind. The thing here, well, could be better, but again, at this price point, you're not paying for that yet. But when you do put your hand on the steering wheel, the texture actually feels nice. I mean, the leather wrap they have going on with the baseball stitch is actually quite nice. I mean, the buttons have a nice press to them on the steering wheel. I mean, you have your cursors for the main screen right there, trip, voice command, volume control, all that. You have the different drive modes for the transmission for the CVT. So you have power, you have eco mode, and then if you have, let's say, a power mode, long press, then you have the eco mode right there, which I kind of find weird because now we have both power and eco mode both lit up. That's always strange. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most of the controls favor to having the driver on the right side of the vehicle. Now, like I said earlier, this was made in Indonesia. I mean, I said in other reviews of this vehicle, but this is made in Indonesia by Daihatsu, Toyota Daihatsu in Indonesia. So that's a predominantly, well, it is a right-hand market, right-hand drive market, as is most of Southeast Asia. So if anything, we who drive on the left side of the car and drive on the right side of the road, we are the minority. So keep that in mind. So that's why you have the manual mode to the right side. But the other more important thing is actually when it comes to the main screen. Now, as you can see, it has your usual radio, phone, Bluetooth, USB, iPod, all that stuff. It even has the vehicle information, which is actually really nice. I would love to use this feature on Baguio just to see what the incline actually is. But you have your voltmeter, water temp, outside temp, all interesting stuff. I mean, especially if you're very interested into cars. But you also have your Android Auto right here. So one thing I did notice is that you can't pinch it. So I've been trying to pinch it, but no, it doesn't work. So when I'm using Waze, it doesn't work, but gives me all of my apps. But what I meant by this being favored towards a right-hand drive market is the position of the microphone, which is right there, right? So the other day I was making a call, or actually taking a call from the car, and the person I was talking to commented that, hey, you sound like you're really far or you're really underwater. So what I did was, hello, 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 and then they said, oh yeah, much clearer. So keep that in mind when you're making a call. It will sound like you're a little bit further away from the mic. If you pop the hoods of both of these vehicles, expecting to find something a little more special in the more expensive Veloz compared to the Avanza, well, you'll be disappointed. Because the engines of these, both the same. Both are the 1.5 liter 2NR VE, both make 106 PS and 138 Newton meters of torque. Both have CVTs driving the front wheels, so mechanically, there's really no difference. Now, what's key, however, is that a lot are concerned about the power and the torque of the engine, especially when we put people inside. And actually, that's going to be very much true because we can't really expect much from a 1.5 liter non-turbo engine. However, in my experience with the Veloz thus far, which I'll show you later, is that the way Toyota tuned the powertrain, they made it more, let's say, sensitive to your throttle inputs. You'll see later once we start playing around with it and showing you how that the throttle behaves, particularly with the RPM. Now, what's really interesting about both of these vehicles, once you pop the hood, is that it is a classic example of how to economize car manufacturing. For one, do you see any plastic covering anything? Absolutely none, because there's no cover here. You can see the really tall risers from the platform of this, which by the way is now the DNGA platform. Even with the way the valve cover is, the engine cover, there's no engine cover actually, just a valve cover. Plugs are exposed. You can see the wiring there. Even when I'm looking at the way the wiring was done, I don't know, that won't pass if I was the one actually taking a close look at how things are manufactured. But again, I'm not a manufacturing engineer. I'm just calling it as I see it. If I was working on a car, I'd really tape everything up, and I can even see, yeah, the electrical tape for the harness. They didn't try to tuck it in neatly, make it look pretty, because you as the owner, well, you're not really going to be looking at this all the time unless you really want to go under the hood. But the biggest indicator, actually two indicators, there's no cover underneath to prevent, let's say, pets, not really pets, but let's say cats from getting into the engine bay. So that's something the aftermarket sells. But the key thing here that you're gonna see when it comes to economizing a vehicle manufacturing, particularly with painting, is all the overspray. Now, first, the actual engine bay, the metal in here, is not painted to the same spec or the same color as the body. I mean, you can see that clearly when you look at that. But when you look at the engine bay of this, you can see it's primer gray, even here, and I can see a lot of overspray. I mean, even me, as you know, when I do rattle can jobs on whatever it is I'm painting, like RC cars or whatnot, I would mask everything off, make sure the lines are clean. But here, well, clearly Toyota, or Daihatsu actually, wasn't really paying too much attention to it, because if it saves you a few minutes at the paint booth, well, that makes the car cheaper to manufacture and more affordable to purchase. So keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the vehicle. So far as a daily drive, I'm actually liking the Veloz. I mean, power steering, it's actually light. I've got good visibility. I've got my Apple CarPlay, my Android Auto. I mean, I usually use the Android Auto. Wireless charger if ever I need it. Electronic parking brake, an automatic transmission. What's not to like? Oh, and of course, in recent Toyota fashion, the AC is ridiculously cold. So right now, I mean, the vehicles we're usually given for test drives are usually not tinted, actually almost never tinted. So having a good AC is actually very important. And lately, I mean, we all used to always joke in the 90s and the 2000s that Nissan's aircons are the coldest. No, actually, lately it's become Toyota, because they're only, no matter what kind of temperature you put it on, up to around maybe 24, it's still very, very cold. Like right now, it's 23. Yeah, the 24 now. It's also still like the same as if it was 18. So keep that in mind. This can get chilly if you leave it on that setting, on the high blower setting, for a long time. But of course, being that these are economical models, like even like the Avanza or this Veloz, these are economical models meant to be economy cars. There are going to be some sacrifices. And the number one sacrifice is really NVH, because you hear more, you feel more in a vehicle like this. You feel more of the road because it can be a bit bumpy. You can also hear a bit more of the sound because the glass is not that thick. The sound deadening is not as good as in other models. And when you put your foot down, you hear more of the engine and the transmission and the CVT working together, particularly the CVT. You know how it is when you put your foot down on the CVT, it sounds like a sewing machine. You get that in this one. Of course, compared to the previous generation one, based on the older Avanza platform with the rear wheel drive, this is actually a big improvement in terms of NVH, because I did drive an Avanza for several years as a daily drive with a previous company. And I remember that vehicle was really, really bumpy. I mean, the front suspension was okay. It was the rear suspension when you're not loaded and you're driving alone. It really gets bouncy because it's meant to carry 7 people. You know, so when you drive it around, let's say solo, it feels like a pickup truck, where it's bouncy. It's really, really bouncy in the back. This one, no. It's actually the dampening is actually better than that one, but you can feel that the ride comfort is, if you, let's say, drive in something like a Corolla, or actually even, let's say, an Innova, a bigger model like an Innova. The NVH of this one compared to that is going to be a long way away. So yeah, try not to compare that. This is meant to be a starting family's car, and that's actually a good thing. I mean, even with the rest of the Toyota models from Indonesia, those are meant to be first cars as well, especially with something like the Toyota Wigo. I mean, when they first launched it in the Philippine market, like, I think almost 10 years ago now, it was meant to really compete and really target the emerging Chinese car market at the time, and it did so very successfully. It took on the hatchback market and became a very successful model for Toyota. With this one, they're just giving you the seating capacity of an Innova in something a bit smaller, a lot more affordable. The Toyota Veloz is not meant to be an exciting drive. I mean, you can't really expect much excitement from a 1.5 and a CVT here. Let me show you. You put your foot down. Yeah, it's not going to be an exciting vehicle in that sense, but it was never meant to be. It was meant to be a vehicle that can carry 7 people successfully. And now you may think, well, what can a 1.5 NA do with 7 people in the car? Well, as it turns out, actually it's okay, especially at city speeds, because at these kinds of speeds, you don't really need that much. You don't need big power. You don't need big torque. You'll be moving right along fine with a vehicle like this. Of course, when the incline gets a little bit difficult, and if you're fully loaded plus gear, it can get tricky. You will have to put your foot down a bit more to get up there. And yes, it can make it up to Baguio, but you have to plan your overtakes, and you also have to choose your roads a bit more wisely. Cannon Road uphill, it'll be doable, but not great, not fantastic. You won't really enjoy that experience. But if you take, let's say, the other one, the one with gentler slopes like Marcos Highway, you might be able, actually you will be able to make it no problem at all. But what's good here is the fuel economy, because even in the city, in our kind of traffic, I was averaging around 10.5 kilometers per liter, not even trying. If I really do try, I probably get around 12. But on the highway, I was easily getting 18.5 to 19.5. So depending on what the speed is, what the traffic is, I did encounter some traffic on the NLEX the other day. But this one is perfectly okay on the highway. The only thing I really don't like is that for a vehicle that's going to be marketed towards families for long drives and road trips, it's missing one important feature, and that is cruise control. So there's no regular cruise control. I mean, it comes with Toyota Safety Sense, but they didn't give it the adaptive cruise control. They didn't even give it the regular cruise control. So keep that in mind on long drives. If you want to go, let's say, Baguio, TP Lex, all that stuff, yeah, you will have to be using your foot all of the way. So far, for a vehicle that's undoubtedly had quite a bit of hard use as a media vehicle, as a loaner vehicle, it's not really cared for as much. That's really how it is with these kinds of vehicles, unfortunately. But it also shows you how the vehicle has aged, and even though it's had some mileage on it, it's changed hands so many times, the interior is still fresh. I mean, the steering wheel looks like it's nice and still pretty neat. The way it behaves is actually still okay. The only thing I really did was really checked out the tire pressure, made sure it was up to scratch. That is the blind spot warning when I signaled right, because there are motorcycles on my right. But that's a feature I actually appreciate. There's also the lane departure warning and the forward collision and the AEB on this vehicle. But one thing I did notice is that I did experience a gremlin with the AEB. It activated while I was on Marcos Highway in Metro Manila. And what happened there was it did a phantom brake on me. It went full brake, activated the AEB without any vehicle in front of me, nowhere near. So it sensed something and then just, did a full brake. Thankfully, there was no one behind me, but ever since then, I've had the AEB turned off. The other one was when I had this, when I first got this unit, was that the parking brake, when I started up in the morning, it showed up as an alarm, like have a check parking brake sign here. on the multi-info display. I wasn't able to take a photo, but I remember I was kind of careful just to make sure it didn't stop on me, it didn't fail on me. But other than that, it's been a pretty good experience. So yeah, that's really the thing with all these extra electronics in vehicles. Like, the more sophisticated they get, the more points of failure you get, the more possible points of failure you get. So I'm sure the guys at Toyota will be taking a close look at what's going on, but so far that's been the experience. At AI, we like to break down these decisions that car makers make when it comes to engineering, building, designing their vehicles. And in the case of the Veloz and the Avanza, it's a very interesting process, at least the way we see it when we actually look at the vehicle. We saw things that seemed unfinished, like in the engine bay. We saw plastics, experienced plastics that aren't really that great when it comes to, let's say, comparing it to a Corolla, for instance, and also when it comes to the ride and all of that stuff, the refinement. I mean, it still rides very nice, but of course you can feel that it's a bit of a step down from something like a Corolla. This one tops out at just over 1 million. This one tops out at just over 1.2. And that's the interesting thing about both of these vehicles. That's why we also awarded the Avanza and the Veloz as basically one for our family car category in 2022, because we appreciate that Toyota offered an affordable vehicle which starts out at just a little bit over 800 all the way over to the range of the Veloz. It gives customers more options to choose from, and that's what's important, especially now. Do you agree with the statements we made about the Veloz? Well, let us know in the comments below. But one thing is for certain, whichever you pick, we have no doubts that it's going to serve your family well, even if it means going up to Baguio. Now, I didn't take it to Baguio personally, but make no mistake about it, I saw quite a few Velozes and Avanzas going up there. This is Vince of AutoIndustriya.com.